The rain hammered against the cracked windows of the Blackwood Research Facility as Marcus Holloway made his rounds through the abandoned corridors. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating peeling paint and broken equipment that corporate cleanup crews had deemed too expensive to remove. 3 years ago, this place had been the pinnacle of scientific achievement. Now it was just another monument to corporate greed, and cover-ups. Marcus adjusted his security guard uniform, the polyester fabric scratching against skin that had once worn tailored suits during his tenure as a respected archaeologist. That was before the incident in Peru, before the allegations, before his reputation crumbled like ancient pottery. Now he spent his nights walking empty hallways for minimum wage, accompanied only by the echoes of his footsteps and the numb ghosts of his former life. The facility's sub-basement was always the worst part of his route. The air grew thick and oppressive. Down there, as if something heavy pressed against his chest with each breath. Tonight felt different, though. There was an electricity in the air, a tension that made the hairs on his arms stand at attention as he descended the metal stairs. His flashlight flickered. Marcus cursed under his breath and smacked the device against his palm until the beam steadied. The basement stretched before him, a maze of reinforced concrete and steel doors that had once housed classified experiments. Most were empty now, their contents either transferred or destroyed when Blackwood's funding dried up. But not all of them. At the far end of the corridor stood Cell 47, the one door that remained sealed with multiple locks and warning signs. Marcus had always been curious about what lay beyond that threshold, but his supervisor had been clear during orientation. That room stays locked. Don't ask questions, don't try to peek inside, and definitely don't touch anything. Tonight, however, something was wrong. The door stood slightly ajar, its electronic locks blinking red in the darkness. Marcus approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to the radio on his belt. He should call this in, follow protocol, let someone else deal with whatever had escaped. A soft whimper echoed from within the cell. It wasn't the sound of a monster or a dangerous experiment. It was the sound of something in pain, something afraid. Marcus had heard similar sounds during his archaeological expeditions when they'd rescued injured animals from cave systems. Against every instinct screaming at him to run, he pushed the door open wider. The cell was larger than he'd expected, with walls lined in some kind of energy-dampening material that seemed to absorb his flashlight beam. In the center sat a figure, hunched in the corner, seemingly made of living shadow. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its edges wavered like smoke, and where its face should have been, 2 points of silver light regarded him with what looked like surprise. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, the way he might address a wounded animal. "Are you hurt?" The shadow creature recoiled at first, pressing itself further into the corner. But something in Marcus's tone must have reached it, because those silver points of light tilted slightly. As if curious, Marcus noticed the restraints scattered around the cell, broken chains and shattered containment devices. Whatever this being was, it had been held prisoner here for who knows how long. The thought made his stomach turn. He'd spent his career studying ancient civilizations, learning about their treatment of the unknown and different. Apparently, humanity hadn't progressed as much as he'd hoped. "I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered, crouching down to appear less threatening. "My name is Marcus." "What did they do to you?" The creature's form seemed to solidify slightly, and it extended what might have been a hand toward him. When Marcus didn't flee, it moved closer, its presence oddly comforting despite its alien appearance. As their eyes met, Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him. This wasn't a monster at all. Detective Rosa Vance had seen plenty of crime scenes in her 15 years with the Paranormal Investigation Unit, but the destruction at the Blackwood facility was unlike anything in her files. Security footage showed the shadow entity's escape, but what puzzled her was the complete absence of casualties. Every other documented case of supernatural breakouts had left bodies in their wake. According to the night supervisor, only one guard was on duty, her partner Jenkins said, reviewing his notes. Marcus Holloway, 34, former archaeologist with a spotty record. Hasn't reported for work since the incident 3 days ago. Rosa studied the frozen frame on her tablet, showing the moment the creature first encountered the guard. Instead of attacking, it seemed to be communicating. Have we located Holloway yet? Apartment 4B on Elm Street. Building super says he's been holed up inside. Won't answer the door. Neighbors complain about strange sounds at night. The drive across town gave Rosa time to think. She'd spent her career hunting things that shouldn't exist, protecting civilians from horrors that lurked in the shadows. But something about this case felt different. The entity had been contained at Blackwood for over 2 years, subject to experiments that the classified files only hinted at. If it wanted revenge, why hadn't it taken it? Marcus Holloway's apartment building was a rundown structure that had seen better decades. Rosa climbed the narrow staircase, her hand resting on the blessed silver bullets in her service weapon. The hallway reeked of old cigarettes and broken dreams. She knocked on apartment 4B's door. Mr. Holloway, Detective Vance, Metropolitan Paranormal Unit. I need to speak with you about the incident at Blackwood. Silence. I know you're in there, Marcus. Your neighbors hear you talking to someone. We just want to help. A soft voice came through the door. Go away. You can't help. Nobody can. Try me. I've seen things that would make most people question their sanity. Whatever's happening to you, you don't have to face it alone. The locks clicked open one by one. There were at least 5 of them. The door cracked open, revealing a chain lock and part of Marcus's haggard face. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his hair disheveled and stubble covering his jaw. You wouldn't understand, he said. Everyone thinks it's a monster, but they're wrong. They're all wrong. Then help me understand. Let me in and will. Talk. Marcus hesitated, glancing over his shoulder into the darkened apartment. Rosa heard what sounded like a whispered conversation in a language she didn't recognize. Finally, he unhooked the chain. The apartment was sparse, furnished with second-hand pieces that spoke of a man who'd lost everything and was rebuilding from scratch. But what caught Rosa's attention was the corner where shadows seemed deeper then. They should be where the darkness moved independently of any light source. It's okay, Marcus said softly to the shadows. She's here to help. The darkness coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape, those distinctive silver points of light, regarding Rosa with what she could only describe as curiosity rather than hostility. Her hand moved instinctively toward her weapon, then stopped as Marcus stepped protectively between them. Please don't, he said. It hasn't hurt anyone. It's been protecting me. Protecting you from what? As if in answer, the apartment's lights suddenly went out. Through the window, Rosa saw 3 black vans pulling up outside the building. Men in tactical gear began pouring out, their weapons gleaming with the telltale shimmer of supernatural containment tech. Blackwood Security, Marcus whispered, his face pale. They found us. The shadow entity moved with liquid grace, positioning itself between the window and Marcus. Its form expanded, becoming more solid, more present. Rosa realized with a shock that it wasn't preparing to attack, it was preparing to defend. We need to go, she said, her training overriding her confusion. Is there another way out? Marcus nodded toward a window leading to the fire escape. But they'll follow us. They'll never stop hunting. Then we'll have to make sure they can't. Rosa looked at the entity, whose silver eyes seemed to understand her perfectly. Can you get us out of here safely? The creature's response was to enveloped both humans in its shadowy embrace. Rosa expected cold, expected fear, but instead felt only warmth and an overwhelming sense of protection. They moved through the darkness like ghosts, leaving the Blackwood teen searching empty rooms. Dr. Felix Whitmore's underground laboratory hadn't seen visitors in months, which was exactly how he preferred it. Hidden beneath an abandoned subway station, the facility was his penance, a place where he could work to undo the horrors he'd helped create at Blackwood. When his security system alerted him to 3 figures approaching through the old tunnels, he almost activated the lockdown protocol's dot. Then he saw Marcus Holloway on his monitors, accompanied by a woman he didn't recognize, and the entity he'd helped imprison for 2 long years. "Felix," Marcus called out as they emerged from the shadows. "We need your help. Blackwood security forces are hunting us." The old scientist's hands trembled as he opened the blast doors. Seeing the shadow entity free from its containment filled him with equal parts terror and relief. "My God, what have you done? Do you know what that thing is capable of?" "It's not a thing," Marcus said firmly. "And it's been protecting us, not hunting us." Rosa stepped forward, flashing her badge. "Detective Vance, Paranormal Unit, Dr. Whitmore. We need answers." What exactly was Blackwood doing to this entity? Felix's weathered face crumpled with shame. "We called it Project Guardian. The entity appeared in our dimensional research lab 3 years ago, not through any summoning or portal we opened, but as if it was drawn there by something. At first, we thought it was hostile. The shadow creature had positioned itself near Marcus, its form rippling with what Felix recognized as agitation. Those silver eyes held an intelligence he'd tried to ignore during the experiments, a consciousness that had haunted his dreams ever since. "You were wrong," Marcus said. "It's not hostile at all." "We realized that too late," Felix admitted, leading them deeper into his lab. The initial tests showed it responding to emotional distress. Whenever our researchers were upset or frightened, it would try to comfort them. But the military contracts, the funding, they wanted a weapon, not a guardian. He pulled up holographic displays showing brain scans and energy readings. "We discovered it's not from our dimension at all. It's what we might call an empathic entity, something that exists to protect and nurture. In its home dimension, creatures like this serve as guardians for entire civilizations." "Then why did you keep torturing it?" Rosa demanded. "Because Blackwood's board of directors saw dollar signs," Felix said bitterly. "They thought if they could weaponize its protective instincts, turn them aggressive, they could create the perfect soldier. So they exposed it to violence, to pain, trying to corrupt its nature. The entity's form darkened, memories of captivity clearly affecting it. Marcus reached out instinctively, and the creature calmed at his touch. The bonding process was unexpected," Felix continued. "We'd noticed it responding strongly to certain individuals, those who showed it kindness rather than fear. You, Marcus, you were the first person to treat it as a being rather than a specimen." "Bonding process?" Rosa asked. "Empathic entities choose their companions based on compatibility of spirit. Once bonded, they become utterly devoted protectors. The connection is permanent and grows stronger over time." Felix looked directly at the creature. "I'm sorry. We didn't understand what we were doing to you." The shadow entity moved closer to Felix, its form becoming less threatening. Those silver eyes seemed to regard him with something that might have been forgiveness. "There's more," Felix said urgently. "Blackwood didn't just want one guardian. They wanted to create more. They've been sending dimensional probes, trying to capture others of its kind. If they succeed, they'll torture more innocent beings," Marcus finished. "Worse, they'll disrupt the dimensional barriers that keep the realms separate. The entity's people are peaceful, but they won't tolerate the systematic capture and abuse of their guardians indefinitely." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the laboratory. Felix's screens showed Blackwood tactical teams surrounding the subway entrance. "They've found us," Rosa said, checking her weapon. A shadow entity's form expanded, becoming more solid and defined. For the first time, Felix could see its true appearance. Not a monster of living darkness, but a being of profound beauty and grace, its body composed of starlight and cosmic energy rather than shadow. "It's not going to let them take you," Felix realized, "or any of us." The entity looked at Marcus with those silver eyes, and somehow Felix understood what was being communicated. "It's asking for your permission to protect us," he translated. "But it wants you to know that once it fully manifests its power, there's no hiding what it is anymore." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Do it." The laboratory filled with light as the Guardian revealed its true nature. Victoria Sterling stood in the abandoned warehouse district, her perfectly tailored suit incongruous among the rusted shipping containers and broken concrete. As Blackwood Corporation's Director of Acquisitions, she'd built her career on obtaining assets others deemed impossible to acquire. The escaped entity represented her greatest challenge yet, and potentially her most profitable success. "Perimeter secured, ma'am," reported Captain Hayes, leader of her private military contractors. "Thermal imaging shows 4 heat signatures in the central warehouse. The entity appears to be shielding them somehow." Victoria examined the tactical display on her tablet. "Any casualties from the subway incident?" "Negative. Our teams found evidence of the entity's manifestation, but no bodies. Whatever it did to get them out, it was precise. Interesting." The creature continued to defy expectations, showing restraint when it could have easily eliminated the pursuit teams. Victoria had read Felix Whitmore's classified reports before. Blackwood officially terminated his research. The entity's protective nature was both its greatest asset and its most exploitable weakness. "Dr. Whitmore's psychological profile suggests the entity will prioritize the safety of its chosen companion above all else," she told Hayes. "We use that against it." The warehouse's interior was vast and shadowy, filled with abandoned machinery and shipping crates that created a maze of hiding places. Victoria's team moved with professional precision, surrounding the building while she approached the main entrance with a small escort. "Marcus Holloway," she called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "My name is Victoria Sterling. I represent Blackwood Corporation's Board of Directors. We need to talk." Silence answered her. "I know you're in there, along with Detective Vance and Dr. Whitmore, and of course, our escaped asset." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You've caused us considerable expense, Mr. Holloway. Property damage, security breaches, lost research data. But we're prepared to be reasonable." A figure emerged from behind a shipping container, Marcus, looking exhausted but defiant. The shadow entity materialized beside him, its form rippling with barely contained energy. "Reasonable?" Marcus laughed. Bitterly. "You tortured an innocent being for 2 years. There's nothing reasonable about Blackwood. We conducted necessary research on a potentially dangerous anomaly," Victoria corrected smoothly. "Research that could benefit all of humanity. Surely you understand the importance of scientific progress, Dr. Holloway?" "Oh yes, we know about your archaeological background and your difficulties in Peru." Marcus flinched at the reference to his past disgrace, but the entity moved closer to him, offering silent support. "You see," Victoria continued, "the creature has formed an attachment to you. That's valuable data that can help us understand its psychology. Return with us willingly, and we'll ensure you're treated as a research partner rather than a security." "Risk? Go to hell," Rosa Vance said, emerging from cover with her weapon drawn. "The entity isn't property to be owned." Victoria smiled coldly. "Detective Vance, your superiors are very interested in your unauthorized involvement in this case. Continue to interfere, and you'll find your career as terminated as your friend's academic credentials. The warehouse suddenly grew darker, shadows deepening despite the industrial lighting. The entity's form expanded, becoming more solid and imposing. Those silver eyes now blazed with protective fury. "Ah, there's the response we've been waiting for," Victoria said, signaling her teams. "All units, prepare containment protocols. Target is showing aggressive behavior." "It's not aggressive," Felix Whitmore said, stepping into view. "It's protective. There's a difference you never bothered to learn." Specialized weapons powered up around the warehouse. Electromagnetic pulse generators designed to disrupt the entity's energy matrix. Victoria had spared no expense on equipment specifically designed to counter the creature's abilities. "Last chance, Mr. Holloway," she said. "Surrender the asset, and everyone walks away safely." The entity looked at Marcus, those silver eyes asking a silent question. Marcus met its gaze steadily. "We're not surrendering anything," he said. "You want to cage something beautiful and turn it into a weapon? You'll have to go through me first." Victoria's smile turned predatory. "If you insist." The attack came from all sides. Energy nets designed to contain supernatural entities, electromagnetic pulses meant to disrupt its form, and tranquilizer darts aimed at the humans. But the Guardian was no longer the confused, weakened creature. That had been captured years ago. It had found its purpose, its companion, and its strength. Light exploded from the entity's core, not the harsh glare of artificial illumination, but something warm and cosmic. The containment nets dissolved, like spiderwebs in a hurricane. The electromagnetic weapons overloaded and sparked out. And for the first time, everyone present saw the Guardian's true form, not a shadow creature, but a being of living starlight, beautiful and terrible in its protective rage. Victoria's mercenaries fled in terror, but she stood her ground, her corporate ambition overriding her survival instincts. "Impressive," she said, raising a small device. "But we prepared for this possibility, too." The device emitted a high-pitched whine that made everyone present clutch their heads in pain. Everyone except the entity, which suddenly froze as if paralyzed. "Sonic frequency specifically calibrated to disrupt its neural patterns," Victoria explained. "Dr. Whitmore's research was quite thorough before we terminated his position." The Guardian wavered, its beautiful form flickering like a candle in a storm. Marcus stepped forward despite the pain, reaching toward his companion. "Fight it," he whispered. "You're stronger than their machines." And in that moment of connection, something remarkable happened. The entity's light didn't dim. It transformed, becoming something new, something that incorporated both its own cosmic nature and the human spirit of the man who'd shown it. Kindness. The sonic weapon overloaded and exploded in Victoria's hands. 1 year later, Marcus Holloway sat on the porch of his mountain cabin, watching the sunrise paint the peaks in shades of gold and amber. The Guardian, who had chosen the name Stellan during their long conversations about identity and belonging, materialized beside him in its preferred human-adjacent form. Its appearance had stabilized over the months, resembling a tall figure with skin that held the subtle shimmer of starlight and eyes like liquid silver. "You're thinking about the anniversary," Stellan said, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in Marcus's mind. "Hard not to," Marcus replied, taking a sip of his coffee. "A year ago, I was just a washed-up archaeologist guarding empty buildings. Now, ... Now he was something unprecedented, the first documented human-guardian bond, living proof that the barriers between species and dimensions were far more permeable than anyone had imagined. The cabin had been a gift from an unlikely source, the Galactic Peacekeeping Consortium, who'd intervened when Victoria Sterling's corporate backing had threatened to escalate into an interdimensional incident. Roosevants visited monthly now, heading a new branch of law enforcement dedicated to protecting interdimensional refugees. Felix Whitmore had established a research center focused on ethical xenobiology, with Stellan's people providing willing volunteers for studies that benefited both species. Even Victoria Sterling had found a new purpose, her corporate ruthlessness redirected toward dismantling other exploitative operations across the galaxy. But perhaps most remarkably, Marcus and Stellan weren't alone anymore. Dr. Chun called. "This morning," Marcus said. 3 more bondings were reported this week. A teacher in Tokyo, a park ranger in Brazil, and a librarian in Iceland. Stellan's form brightened with joy. "My people are finding their way here, finding companions who understand." The guardian species, it turned out, had been waiting for humanity to evolve past its initial xenophobia. The bonds forming worldwide were proof that both species were ready for the next phase of their relationship. Each pairing was unique. Some guardians manifested as beings of living water, others as creatures of pure thought, or crystalline entities that sang in frequencies beyond human hearing. "Are you happy?" Marcus asked, a question that had become their daily ritual. Stellan's silver eyes met his, and Marcus felt the warm pulse of contentment that flowed between them constantly now. "I have found my purpose," Stellan replied. "I protect what I cherish, and I am cherished in return. My people have a saying, 'The guardian who finds love finds infinity.'" Marcus smiled, remembering the broken man he'd been a year ago. The disgrace in Peru seemed like someone else's life now. His archaeological skills had found new application in cataloging artifacts from Stellan's dimension, while his experience with ancient civilizations helped establish protocols for first contact with other interdimensional species. A soft chime from his communication device interrupted his thoughts. The screen showed an incoming message from the consortium's Earth liaison. "Guardian emergence detected in Moscow. Requesting advisor assistance. Can you and Stellan respond?" Marcus looked at his companion, who was already shifting into its travel form, a more condensed version of its cosmic self that could move undetected through human populations. "Another scared guardian?" Stellan asked. "Sounds like it. Probably confused and frightened, maybe even captured." Marcus stood, feeling the familiar surge of purpose that had replaced his old cynicism. Ready to help another lost soul find their way home? Stellan's form solidified into its protective configuration, starlight coalescing into something that radiated both power and gentleness. Always, that is what guardians do. As they prepared for another rescue mission, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had changed. The man who'd once been called a fraud and a failure was now part of something larger than himself, a bridge between worlds, a translator of species, a protector of the innocent. But most importantly, he was no longer alone. The shadow creature that everyone had called a monster had become his dearest friend, his constant companion, his family. And in showing kindness to something the world feared, Marcus had discovered not just Stellan's true nature, but his own. Together, they stepped into the transport beam that would carry them to Moscow, ready to help another guardian find their way from the darkness into the light. After all, everyone deserved someone who would defend them when the world called them a monster, even the monsters themselves. The end.